Tremendous honor to have you. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm studying in Amity University in a Master's in Clinical Psychology, and it's my second year. And planning to do MPhil.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
So the topic we are going to talk on today is cognitive distortions. So according to you, what is cognitive distortion?
So cognitive distortion, first let's understand what cognition is. So cognition is the activities which are related to our brain. And when we describe cognitive distortion, it is a term used to describe errors in thinking that lead to self-destructive behavior. Irrational thinking, which is typically rooted in individuals' attempt to cope up a feeling with when we have anxiety. We use cognitive distortions to cope up with that feelings. So irrational behaviors are the behaviors which are not acceptable by the society. And self-destructive behaviors are the behaviors where we harm ourselves.
Right. Can you in brief list the 10 types of cognitive distortions?
So coming to the listing of cognitive distortions, first is the emotional reasoning, where we assume that whatever negative emotions we have, that is because I feel it, that it must be true. So for example, if I'm feeling that if I'm not having a fever, but still I'm feeling that I'm having a fever, that means it must be true, whether it is acceptable, whether it is there or not. External stimulus present or not, but we still think that it is there. So this is emotional.
Right.
Second, coming to should statements. So should statements generate a lot of emotional turmoil. They rise from extreme expectations and unhealthy societal norms. So they must be under our pressure that we should do this, we should do that. Because of this, we cannot succeed. So this is should statement. In every situation, we are there to say we have to do it, whether or not we achieve it or not, but we have to do it.
Or so something bad would happen.
Or something bad would happen. And this most probably called guilt, anger, resentment feeling. The third we come is mental filters. So here the individuals pick out a negative details and dwell on exclusively so that a vision of all reality become darkened. So in mental filters, basically, we pick out a specific single negative event from the positive events, and we speak about that event only. The positives, we pick out a negative, and we think, and because of that negative thinking, we start saying or doing or act upon that negative event only. Then coming to disqualifying the positives, we reject the positive experiences. They don't count for some reasons, or we can maintain a negative belief that is contracted by your everyday experiences. We tend to disqualify, or we tend to set back the positives, and we tend to see the negatives only.
Yeah.
Coming to, for example, for disqualifying the positive, for example, I don't deserve anything. It does not count. It did not actually compliment me. So this disqualifying the positives. Now coming to magnificent minimization, which is also known as catastrophing. So catastrophing is we exaggerate on things, importance of thing, whether it is there or not, we exaggerate on it. Then coming to all or nothing thinking, we tend to evaluate things in extremes and forces, experiences into absolute categories. So exaggerating our expectations and setting yourselves up for disappointment is all or nothing thinking. Right. We exaggerate ourselves, and we put ourselves in a situation where we have to set up our goals, and when we don't achieve that, we set a disappointment for ourselves. So this is all or nothing thinking. Then coming to overgeneralization, we, like normally also people do, we overgeneralize situations. So we draw conclusions of negative experiences, and we will think that this negative experience will occur again and again, even if it is not tend to occur again. So this is overgeneralization. Now, jumping into conclusions, we make negative interpretations even though there is no definite fact for that conclusion. Still, we will make a negative conclusion only. Whether the situation is positive or negative, our interpretation will be negative towards that. Now, jumping to conclusions, we tend to jump to random. So this jumping to conclusion is divided into two parts. First is mind reading and fortunate teller. So in mind reading, you conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you and you don't even bother for verifying it. So the basic behavior is let everyone say whatever they want to say. I don't want to give any explanations. But fortunate teller error is that we tell to give explanation. We anticipate things out badly and we convince that the prediction, whatever is made for us, it is true.
Right.
So these are the two cognitive distortions jumping to conclusions.
Right.
Now coming to the second last, that is labeling and mislabeling. So labeling and mislabeling is, instead of acknowledging something as one as time incident, we prefer to assign a label to it. You can take one characteristics and measure the whole person by it judgmental. Basically, labeling means if I tend to hear from someone that person is negative, I will obviously have a negative interpretation of it, whether the person is that. So this is labeling. And personalization, coming to the last, personalization means that whatever negative situation is happening in the external environment, the people think that that negative situation has happened because of me. So we tend to take the whole blame on us. Personalization is this.
Right.
You're responsible for any event that is occurring.
So
these were the 10 cognitive distortions.
Right. Can overgeneralization cause superstitious thinking?
Overgeneralization by superstitious thinking basically depends upon the severity of the disorder the person is having. So if we say the person is having depression, so it may or it may not cause superstitious thinking, depends upon the person's behavior and the type of treatment that he or she is seeking.
Right. So can you give an example of overgeneralization?
Overgeneralization in depression can be that I am trying to do it, but I'm still not able to do anything. My expectations, my goals are not met yet. And that's why I think that I am not able to do anything. So this can be a superstitious thinking, that I am of no use, so I should end my life.
Okay. If we talk about all or nothing thinking, do you think it is often seen in borderline patients? And what are the steps that can be taken to curb it?
See, all or nothing thinking is one of the most negative thought processes known as cognitive distortions. So these are common among anxiety and depression patients mostly. And yes, we've seen borderline patients also, because borderline patients are those who have anxiety and depressions. So when we think in all or nothing thinking, we split our views into extremes. Either yes or either not. So either extremely it will happen or extremely it will not happen. So everything from our view of whatever we see our life as. So it is divided into black and white terms. And then, so how can we curb it now? Paying attention to whatever we do. Paying attention to whatever the words we use. So there are 5 to 6 pointers that we can use to curb the all or nothing thinking. Now, the second is thinking when it usually happens. So for example, if we realize that a mistake is triggering us, so we should try not to do that mistake again and again. So the triggering point will automatically come down. Then third is realizing that we can't be right all the time. If we set an expectations to ourselves, it is not every time necessary that we meet that goals. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. So even we fail, we need to accept that failure. And we can curb that all and nothing thinking. And then the fourth is challenging your thoughts. We need to challenge, because we can't always be right. So we need to think, even if we are not right, we need to set up our mindset in this way. It's okay. I will do it again next time. But being in that position and not challenging and just thinking कि अब मुझसे नहीं होगा तो मैं आगे कुछ नहीं कर सकता हूँ, that will lead to a cognitive depression.
Right.
Last is कि we should stop being a perfectionist. No one is perfect. We tend to do mistakes.
Right.
We will do mistakes, and that is the part of our life. This is how we learn. If everyone would be perfect, then the world would have been a different spare
Right.
only at this
Right.
point. So we can't be perfect. So people need to realize that yes, we may make mistakes. Whatever goals we have set up, we may not have been able to achieve it.
Right.
So being perfectionist has to be stopped.
Right. So could an example of all or nothing thinking be that instead of getting 100 on 100, you get 99 on 100 and you see yourself as a failure?
Yeah, there are people who think this. My expectations, my goals were set up that I want to achieve 100 on 100 on my exams. But now if I have not, I just skipped 1 marks, I might not get admission to the university I wanted. Or I might not clear the exam that I wanted. Despite getting the highest marks, I am still thinking that I am not perfectionist and my goals were not met. My expectations were not met, whatever expectations I set for myself.
Right. Right. So speaking on mental filters, is that equivalent to pessimism or cynical outlook?
Mental filters, yeah, we can describe it that mental filters are there. Mental filters basically are the tendency to interpret things negatively. And cynical outlook is that the person will always think that I am negative. The thought and belief process of that person will be negative only. So the mental filters and cynical outlooks are more or less same, but it still depends upon the patient's disorder and the able to cope up.
Right.
So the patient who is able to cope up will obviously not think that mental filters are there, but the patient who has negative thinking at an extreme level, they have cynical outlook towards life.
So can gratitude,
even if the situation is positive, they will only concentrate on the negative situations there. For example, if I'm sitting in a classroom and everyone is silent and only the one person is speaking, but I will be still seeing and concentrating on that one person who is speaking, I will not look towards a positive thing. My thinking will be negative only.
Could you describe the correlation between should statements and perfectionism?
So obviously both are interrelated. In should statement also, the person is like, I need to do this. The extreme expectations is there and societal norms say. And perfectionism is also, in perfectionism also the person is like, I want to achieve everything. I want to be the perfect person in my life. Then nothing negative should happen with it. So these are correlated.
Thank you for taking out the time for the podcast. I will
Welcome.
stop the recording.